The shuttle descended over the Atlantic like an embarrassed meteor, trailing glitter instead of flame. Elijah Clark squinted at the sky from the roof of the diplomatic complex in Nova Lisbon, coffee mug in one hand, tie flapping in the wind like it was trying to escape the meeting ahead. The alien envoys were due to arrive in 30 minutes. The tie, he figured, had the right idea. When the Emprian's ship finally touched down, it didn't so much land as perform a synchronized swan dive into existence. The hull shimmered in layers, like metal that wasn't sure it wanted to be metal, and emitted a melodic tone somewhere between a lullaby and a minor key threat. Out stepped five beings who looked like they belonged on the cover of a very serious fashion magazine, one that refused to admit it was about aliens. Valera was the last to emerge. She was the only one who walked like she'd already decided Earth was amusing. Pale skin with a faint shimmer, shoulder-length yellow hair that caught the sun like gold foil, and long, tapered ears that twitched when she scanned the crowd. Elijah couldn't decide if she looked like an elf, an opera singer, or the most smug negotiator he'd ever seen. Possibly all three. "I am Valera, voice of the Empyrean High Circle," she said, her voice as smooth as melted glass and twice as dangerous. "I bring greetings, peace, and questions about your Earth delicacy, peanut butter." Elijah cleared his throat, stepped forward, and instantly regretted forgetting to rehearse. Right. "On behalf of the United Earth Council, welcome. We bring similar greetings and some pretty decent peanut butter." Valera blinked once. "Do all Earth diplomats use humor as a defense mechanism?" He smiled tightly. "Only the successful ones." They were ushered into the conference center, where ceilings arched high like cathedrals, and the furniture had been designed by someone who assumed no one would ever sit down. Elijah tried to sit anyway. His chair responded by adjusting its form into a spine-hating sculpture. Talks began. The Empyreans shared technology that made Earth's best advances look like cave drawings. Gravity stabilizers, zero-impact engines, a device that translated any language but always added a faintly passive-aggressive tone. Humans offered mineral rights, strategic orbital positions, and a surprisingly popular streaming service that featured documentaries about ducks. Valera, for her part, took to diplomacy like she was playing a game where only she knew the rules. She questioned phrasing, rearranged entire paragraphs of proposed agreements with a single smirk, and corrected Elijah's pronunciation of Empyrean words by leaning so close he could smell stars on her breath. "Did you just say alliance or grilled fungus?" she asked during a particularly tense clause review. "I was going for alliance, but honestly, grilled fungus doesn't sound bad right now. I'll make a note of your culinary preferences. For science." She was infuriating. Brilliant, precise, and devastatingly composed. But she also asked unexpected questions in the downtime. About Earth music, why humans wore socks indoors, and whether sarcasm was considered a mating ritual. "It's more of a survival tactic," Elijah replied once, not realizing she was serious until she took notes on a small, glowing pad that appeared out of nowhere. A week passed. Talks progressed in spirals. Earth officials squirmed. Empyrean envoys hummed disapprovingly when coffee was served too cold. Valera, oddly, started showing up a few minutes early to every meeting, always pretending it was coincidence. Elijah noticed. He pretended he didn't. One evening, after a particularly painful debate about Clause 7 of the Planetary Trade Agreement, something about import tariffs on antimatter seeds, they found themselves alone in the panoramic viewing chamber, staring out over the dark ocean. Valera folded her hands behind her back. "Your oceans are loud." "They do that," Elijah said. "It's the waves, gravity, moon stuff." She nodded slowly. "Your scientific precision continues to impress." He chuckled. "Hey, I didn't come here to impress. Oh, wait, actually I did. That's literally my job." Valera's ears twitched. A sign he was learning meant she was either annoyed or highly amused. Possibly both. "You deflect everything with humor. Do all humans do that when they feel attraction?" What?" "Your pupils dilate when you look at me, and your heart rate increases when I stand closer." She stepped closer. "I think your translator's broken," he muttered. I think your emotional regulation is. He opened his mouth, closed it. So, is this the part where interstellar relations become interstellar relations? I am gathering data, she said, for a full cultural dossier. Sure, he said. Data. Got it. They kissed. It was clumsy, electric, and slightly alarming. Somewhere in the room, a diplomatic surveillance drone exploded from sheer discomfort and quietly rebooted itself. The next morning, the world kept turning. Meetings resumed. Valera acted as if nothing had changed, except her smiles were a little more frequent, her jokes a little sharper. Elijah played it cool, like a man who hadn't just made out with a representative of a civilization that could collapse his government by frowning too hard. But something was shifting beneath the surface, subtle as a tectonic whisper. During a private dinner between the human delegation and the Empyrean envoys, served on plates that glowed faintly and tried to correct posture, Valera leaned over and whispered, hypothetically, what would Earth policy be on offspring from a diplomatic union? Elijah froze mid-bite. Offspring? Like a puppy? Valera arched one perfect brow. Puppies are not biologically viable between our species. I meant a child. He dropped his fork. That's not hypothetical, is it? She took a sip from her cup, which reshaped itself to fit her hand. I prefer to deliver sensitive information over dessert. He blinked at her. She blinked back. And somewhere deep in the foundations of Nova Lisbon's diplomatic tower, something cracked, whether it was protocol, personal boundaries, or just the last remaining illusion of control, no one could say. Elijah sat perfectly still on the edge of his cot, which had come free with the temporary housing unit on lunar base Theta, and smelled vaguely of lemon-scented despair. He hadn't moved in 3 minutes. He was pretty sure if he didn't move, maybe the universe would take back what Valera had just said, or at least send an alien raccoon to tell him it was a prank. That, frankly, felt more likely than the alternative. I'm pregnant, she had said. Not hypothetically, not philosophically. Pregnant. A word that had not, to Elijah's knowledge, ever been part of the official interstellar negotiation vocabulary. A knock echoed from the door. It opened without waiting, because Valera never waited. She stepped inside, dressed in another one of those layered, metallic robes that shimmered like a threat with excellent tailoring. You are still frozen, she observed. Yep, he replied, still trying to make peace with the timeline. She walked over, sat down beside him, and placed a hand on his knee. Biological confirmation occurred on the 5th cycle. Symptoms began on the 7th. The nausea was subtle. I believed it to be Earth cuisine related at first. Elijah sighed and rubbed his temples. I knew that third helping of lunar shrimp linguine was a bad idea. It was glowing. It was not the shrimp. She paused. Although I regret that sauce, it violated several of our internal peace treaties. So, he said slowly, trying to arrange his words into something resembling a rational question, you're absolutely sure it's mine? She looked at him as if he had asked whether gravity was optional. Unless you believe I have been secretly consorting with other diplomats between breakfast briefings, yes. Right. Sorry, this is just a lot. You know, for someone who once fainted watching a birth video in health class. Valera's ears tilted outward in what he had come to learn was her version of a sympathetic smile. Your reaction is statistically average. Empyrean males also tend to faint, though we have recliner protocols for that. Elijah buried his face in his hands. You guys have recliner protocols? Standard in all medical units. The record faint count is 17. One diplomat passed out twice. Somewhere in the control room above, a very nervous technician attempted to pretend he wasn't listening in on every word through the security feed, and failed. Later that day, Elijah found himself in an emergency briefing with 3 counselors, 1 general, a representative from the Interstellar Biological Ethics Committee, and someone from public relations holding a placard that said, "Contain panic, smile." They were gathered in the lunar base Theta observation dome, which looked less impressive when someone had taped charts over the stars. We need clarification, barked General Tolland, who had the temperament of an angry blender and the eyebrows to match. Is this child a threat to planetary security? Elijah's hand shot up, like a kid in class. It's a baby, sir, not a bomb. Don't be glib, Clark. We've never had interspecies hybridization before. Valera, who had entered quietly and was now standing by the window with her arms folded, turned slightly. Technically, we have, just not with humans. You are comparatively new to the diplomatic mingling table. Mingling, muttered one counselor. That's what we're calling it? Should I have labeled it productive genetic experimentation? That seems overly clinical. I liked mingling, Elijah offered. Sounds like we were at a party. Less scandalous. PR held up the placard again. Smile, it read. No one did. By the end of the meeting, Earth's reaction ranged from contain it quietly to send it to Mars, which frankly wasn't the most comforting spectrum of responses. Valera seemed unmoved. Elijah, on the other hand, had begun stress-eating the protein cubes in the corner, which were the color of regret and tasted worse. They were officially placed under diplomatic quarantine, not for any medical reason, but because people didn't know what else to do. Their shared quarters were relocated to an isolated ring on the far side of the station, with round windows and atmospheric lighting that attempted to be calming, but mostly looked like a waiting room for a very expensive dentist. Could be worse, Elijah muttered as he unpacked. They could have sent us to the Martian embassy. I heard it's run by actual dust. Valera examined the soft chair pod with an approving hum. They have given us a nesting chamber. A what now? She gestured around. Soft surfaces, nutritional dispensers, privacy shields, suitable for gestation periods. You mean the couch is for egg laying? She stared at him. He stared back. I'm kidding, he said. Sort of. Valera sat cross-legged on the pod and patted the spot beside her. You will need to adapt to this stage. I'm adapting, he said, joining her reluctantly. At least I think I'm adapting. Step 1, freak out. Step 2, make bad jokes. Step 3, panic nap. She leaned against him, her head resting just below his shoulder. Your coping strategies are peculiar, but not ineffective. Outside, the stars burned silently. Earth turned slowly, still unaware of how much everything had changed. You know, Elijah said after a while, you could have just sent me a text. I considered it, she replied, but I wanted to see your face when you turned green. Ah, romance. I am Empyrean. We find amusement where we can. He sighed and smiled at the ceiling. Well, let's hope the kid gets your diplomacy skills and my ability to say stupid things under pressure. Valera smirked. Let us hope. The press conference was scheduled for 900 Lunar Standard Time, which meant by 8:30, Elijah had already spilled Syntha coffee on his shirt, argued with his reflection twice, and tried to rehearse 3 different ways to say, it's not a galactic scandal, it's just a baby. None of them sounded right. They all made it sound exactly like a galactic scandal, and slightly like a plot to invade Earth with strollers. Valera, of course, looked like a galactic fashion icon who had decided to dabble in interstellar parenting. She wore a silver diplomatic robe with light reactive threads that shimmered subtly as she moved. Her long ears were adorned with ceremonial rings, one of which changed color based on her body temperature. A detail Elijah had found fascinating and slightly terrifying during morning arguments. You're overthinking it, she said, reading his micro-expressions like subtitles on a bad soap opera. I'm underthinking it, actually, he muttered, buttoning the top of his jacket. That's the problem. I keep thinking if I say it fast enough, maybe no one will notice the part about you being pregnant with a hybrid child conceived during an interspecies diplomatic summit. That is, in fact, the only part they will notice. I know, that's the part I was hoping to soft launch. Valera handed him a neural calming patch. He slapped it on his neck and sighed as the synthetic serotonin kicked in. The conference chamber was packed. Delegates, ambassadors, human press, Empyrean recorders, and one curious duck-shaped drone that had wandered in by mistake and now refused to leave. The backdrop showed rotating images of Earth and Empyrean twin moons spinning in harmony. It looked peaceful. It looked planned. It was neither. Elijah stepped up to the podium, cleared his throat, and tried to remember every public speaking course he'd ever taken. Unfortunately, all he could recall was a video clip where someone fainted during a speech about fiscal reform. Good morning, he began, voice a little too high. We'd like to thank everyone for being here today on such brief notice. It's been a productive series of talks between Earth and the Empyrean delegation, full of cooperation, mutual understanding, and occasional translation disasters. A chuckle, a few at least, encouraging. And while progress has been made on trade, defense protocols, and cultural exchange, we're here today to announce a development that is both personal and historic. He paused, looked at Valera. She gave a small nod. I'm, we are expecting a child. Silence fell like someone had muted reality. Then, wait, what? Someone near the back yelped. Valera stepped forward, calm as a glacier. The child is a product of consensual union between myself and diplomat Clark. This represents the first viable hybrid offspring between Empyrean and human biology. We believe this moment has implications both biological and symbolic. Someone dropped a datapad. Another person whispered, "Do hybrids have ears?" Elijah leaned back toward the mic. Too early to tell, but if so, they'll be long and majestic. The laughter was hesitant, but it helped. A little. Of course, the backlash began before they even left the chamber. News feeds lit up across systems. Headlines ranged from alien envoy expecting human love child to diplomatic disaster or cosmic love story. A Mars-based gossip site published a deeply inaccurate article titled 10 Things the Empyrean Pregnancy Craving Might Reveal About the Fate of Earth. Valera read it aloud while eating something that looked like translucent spaghetti and tasted like microwave envy. Number 5, if she starts craving Earth cheese, prepare for an invasion. Cheese is a gateway dairy, Elijah said solemnly. The next thing you know, you're dropping sanctions for Brie. They were summoned to a high-level emergency summit, which Elijah privately renamed the Meeting of Galactic Panic and Awkward Glances. Attendees included Earth's Global Council, the Empyrean High Envoy via holoprojection, and one very tired legal representative from the Interplanetary Species Rights Committee who opened with, "I was supposed to be on vacation today." The Empyrean High Envoy's holoprojection flickered like an expensive ghost. She was regal, composed, and clearly deeply irritated. "Valera," the envoy said, "you were instructed to engage in diplomatic exchange, not reproductive experimentation." "With respect," Valera replied, "I did both." There was a pause during which several council members forgot how to breathe. "And what," the envoy said slowly, "is the plan now?" "We raise the child," Elijah said. "Teach them both cultures. Teach them how to survive press conferences. We ensure they are safe," Valera added, "and surrounded by allies, and that they never eat lunar shrimp linguine." The discussion devolved into policy points: inheritance rights, citizenship status, medical observation protocols. Elijah drifted a little. His mind wandered to whether they'd have to name the baby something that worked in both languages. Empyrean names tended to sound like opera notes. Earth names had already failed him once. He still remembered being named after a biblical prophet by two parents who didn't even go to church. That night back in their quarters, he found Valera sitting in the glow of the ambient star screen, her hands resting lightly over her stomach. "Do you think we're insanely sheesh?" he asked. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "But sanity is not the measure of impact." He sat beside her. "Do you think we'll be okay?" "I think," she said, "that if we are not, we will at least be unforgettable." He kissed her temple, laughing softly. "That's one way to get remembered in the history books." "The other," she said, "involves scandal and poorly timed speeches." "Still doing better than the Martian ambassador who proposed marriage during a military tribunal. He used a slide deck. It was very persuasive." They leaned back together, staring out into the artificial stars. Outside their small bubble of calm, the universe had taken notice. Inside it, two very different beings were trying to make peace. One joke, one heartbeat, one improbable future at a time. There was something undeniably surreal about watching a diplomatic housing unit reconfigure itself into a nursery. Elijah stood in the middle of the room, hands on hips, as a collection of automated drones floated around him, arguing softly in binary about whether the crib should hover or stay grounded for cultural neutrality. "Just make it stop blinking," he muttered. One of the drones chirped in protest and projected a soft lavender glow across the crib's frame. The glow pulsed gently, like the universe was trying to lull the baby to sleep several months in advance. Valera entered the room holding what appeared to be a stack of instructional spheres and a cup of nutrient broth that smelled like molten mint. The Empyrean Parenting Council sent suggestions, 587 of them. I can barely keep 3 houseplants alive, Elijah said, and one of them is actually a plastic sculpture I talk to when I'm stressed. She placed the spheres neatly on the console and offered him the broth. You are not expected to master everything, merely to survive it. That sounds like an Empyrean proverb. It is also excellent advice for interspecies diaper changes. They were on the orbital station Aegis 7 now, Earth's most secure diplomatic habitat, and ironically, the only place no one trusted either of them. After the press leak, after the interviews, after the suspiciously dramatic news segments titled, "The Baby That Could Break the Galaxy," the powers that be had quietly removed them from public view, officially for their protection, unofficially so no one had to make eye contact while reading memos about hybrid gestation procedures. Valera didn't seem to mind. She took her exile like she took everything, calmly, gracefully, with a trace of condescending amusement. Elijah handled it by reorganizing sock drawers and pretending the synth gravity treadmill didn't squeak when he ran on it. The baby was growing fast. Not alarmingly fast, but just fast enough to make every scan slightly more interesting than the last. By Earth standards, they were about halfway through the term. By Empyrean metrics, they were entering the phase of internal rhythmic bonding, which apparently involved lullabies sung in minor chords and something called thermal whispering. What's thermal whispering? Elijah had asked. Valera placed his hand on her stomach, and suddenly his palm felt warm. Not just surface warm, but radiating from the inside, like someone had lit a candle just beneath the skin. Oh, he'd said, blinking. That's weirdly cozy. It is how our young recognize their bonded pair. I thought that was eye contact. Valera looked at him dryly. Only on Tuesdays. The rhythms of life aboard Aegis 7 settled into a pattern. Wake up, eat something vaguely edible, check for galactic panic updates, watch Valera conduct meetings with Empyrean health officials who all look like they'd been carved from crystal, try not to accidentally open a pressurization valve labeled "Absolutely Do Not Touch," and then argue about names. We're not naming them after your great uncle, Valera said one evening, folding a list of human names with extreme precision. Why not? Hank is sturdy. Hank sounds like a wrench. Okay, what about something bilingual, like Colleen? It sounds poetic and also like a breakfast smoothie. She considered. Acceptable, but not if spelled with a Q. As the due date neared, tensions across Earth and Empyrean territories began to spike. Protest groups formed, some screaming about genetic purity, others demanding open transparency on the child's DNA, and a few who were just mad they hadn't been invited to the baby shower. Security increased. Aegis 7 became a fortress of polite paranoia. No one said it, but everyone was afraid that something would go wrong, or worse, go right and change everything. Then came the breach. It happened during a diagnostic routine. The station's gravity grid flickered, alarms chirped apologetically, and for 45 seconds, all doors unlocked simultaneously. By the time the error was corrected, an unauthorized transmission had reached the outer hull. What was it? Elijah asked, heart pounding. The technician looked pale. A message, encrypted, routed through 5 relay buoys, but we traced it. To who? He paused. Someone on Earth. Extremist faction. They've issued a threat. Valera stood behind Elijah, still and unreadable. Define threat. They said the child represents a destabilizing anomaly, that they'll do what they must. Silence. Elijah sat down slowly. So we're being targeted. Fantastic. That's one thing we forgot to put on the nursery checklist. Security protocols doubled. Valera was fitted with a kinetic pulse band that would instantly repel hostile energy signatures. Elijah was issued a stun ring, which he promptly tested on himself by accident. That's not a doorbell, Valera reminded him as he peeled himself off the floor. I know that now, he groaned. Still, life carried on. They refused to stop making jokes. Valera teased him about his endless attempts to cook human food with Empyrean spices, and he retaliated by leaving sticky notes on her reports with crude stick figures labeled baby prototypes. Then one night, as they lay side by side beneath the glow of the star screen, the baby kicked. Elijah jumped. "Did you feel that?" "I felt that," she said. "That was definitely a foot. That was a whole foot. Or an elbow." No, that's a very confident foot. That's a foot that wants to make first contact." They laughed. Not because everything was fine, because it wasn't. The world was watching, some with hope, some with fear. But in that moment, they were just two people, tangled in a mess far bigger than either had planned for, marveling at the strange, impossible life they had made together. The birthing chamber aboard Aegis 7 wasn't called that in any official document. It was the Adaptive Life Transition Environment, a room with soft bioluminescent walls, floating monitors, and the faint hum of calming frequencies tuned to both human brainwaves and Empyrean neural rhythms. It also had chairs that whispered, "You're doing great," every 10 minutes. Elijah had tried to mute his twice and had been sternly corrected by the station AI. "Is this normal?" he asked, gripping the side of a medical console as Valera calmly floated 2 feet above the floor in zero-grav birthing posture. "No," said the attending physician, a tall Empyrean with translucent skin and a voice like politely running water. "This is significantly faster than projections. Your genetics appear to be enthusiastic." Elijah blinked. "That doesn't sound like a compliment." Valera, floating serenely, eyes closed and glowing faintly, muttered, "If you panic again, I will recalibrate your oxygen levels." "I'm not panicking," he said. "I'm pre-panicking." Totally different category. The birth was luminous, literally. There was a moment, just before the first cry, when light pulsed from Valera's chest, flickering like a beacon into the ceiling, illuminating the entire chamber with a gentle gold hue. And then there was silence, a heartbeat, and a sound Elijah would remember until the end of the stars. A cry, sharp, high, and then warbling oddly at the end, as if learning how to echo in two frequencies at once. The baby had long ears. Elijah cried harder than the baby. The child was healthy, tiny fingers, glowing irises that changed color as they adjusted to the light, a faint shimmer to the skin that faded and reappeared in patterns depending on temperature. Human lungs, Empyrean neural trace signatures, 10 toes, a miracle by every known standard of science. Word spread fast. The press didn't even wait for a photo. By the time the baby was 36 hours old, it was already trending under 5 separate hashtags, including Rami-I or Starborn Diplo Baby and We Come in Pajamas. The extremist faction never struck. In the face of overwhelming public curiosity, a good portion of their support base melted into conspiracy forums to argue over whether the baby was genetically engineered by a secret AI cabal from Saturn. Valera received 3 separate threats, 2 marriage proposals, and 1 offer from a galactic toy manufacturer to license the child's likeness for a plush figure. She declined all offers, politely. The real surprise came from the Empyrean High Circle. Elijah was summoned to the central chamber, this time via a secure stream. He wore a clean shirt. He even ironed it. The High Envoy appeared in shimmering white robes, her tone neutral. "Earth has proven adaptable," she said. "That's one word for it," Elijah replied. "We were not prepared for the public response. Your offspring has created waves in Empyrean culture. We have received messages of celebration from 8 systems. Our social theorists believe the child represents a threshold moment." A threshold moment? A symbol of what is possible when diplomacy becomes something more than speech and negotiation. When it becomes, she hesitated, rare for someone at her level. "Personal," Elijah nodded. "So you're not going to demand Valera return?" "Number she may remain. Your union has redefined the scope of interspecies alliances. We are not accustomed to unexpected variables. But we learn." He logged off and exhaled so hard he nearly destabilized the coffee on the console. Weeks passed. Earth and Empyrean relations, once teetering on a blade's edge, began to stabilize. Joint research stations, cultural exchanges. the announcement of a shared lunar kindergarten with protocols for bilingual tantrums and cross-species toy safety. Elijah adjusted, slowly. He learned how to swaddle without needing instructions. He memorized lullabies in 2 languages. He developed a sixth sense for when Valera was about to correct his posture or his logic, and preempted it with a dumb joke that usually worked. They named the child Kyle. It meant bridge in Empyrean, and in some ancient Earth dialects, it meant mighty or victorious. Also, coincidentally, it was short enough to fit neatly on a onesie. Valera, for all her grace and power, was no less formidable as a mother. But something shifted in her. Her voice softened when she spoke to Kale. Her jokes became more frequent, even if she delivered them like a scientific observation. She called Elijah L now, only in private, and only when he wasn't looking. One night, as Kale slept in a bassinet that floated gently by the window, Elijah stared out at the stars. Valera joined him, wrapping a blanket around them both, something she called a quaint human comfort strategy, and now demanded nightly. "You know," he said, "this wasn't the plan." "There was no plan," she replied, "merely protocol, and we both ignored it." He leaned his head against hers. Do you think he'll be okay?" "Kale, I mean. He will have allies, teachers, guardians, a galaxy that watches with suspicion and wonder, and parents who would burn worlds for him." Elijah blinked. "That's the nicest, vaguely threatening thing you've ever said to me." "You inspire me." They fell quiet. And then, as if on cue, Kyle snorted in his sleep and emitted a sound that suspiciously resembled a hiccuping whistle. "I think he just clicked into a third vocal register," Elijah whispered. Valera smiled. "He's advanced, like his mother." The stars blinked outside. Somewhere another story began. Negotiations on a new planet, a new alliance, a new understanding shaped not by cold treaties, but by connection, by a child, by love and jokes and stubborn, ridiculous hope. In time, Kel would walk between worlds, but for now he slept, and the universe, for once, felt a little less divided. The wind on Drenek 4 howled like it had a grudge, clawing through the broken husks of what once might have been trees. If you listen close, it sounded like a chorus of unhappy ghosts arguing over which one forgot to pack snacks for the apocalypse. My helmet filtered most of the noise, but I left one side open just enough to remind myself I wasn't already dead and plugged into the afterlife's worst simulation. I crouched behind a splintered ridge of carbon-fused rock, fingers wrapped tight around my repeater rifle. The HUD blinked in the corner of my vision, reminding me for the 5th time that my hydration levels were suboptimal, like I hadn't noticed my tongue had become a piece of dry, salted leather. Across the valley, shimmering like a dream on bad software, the Yalari forces stood quiet, too quiet. Their forward artillery hadn't belched plasma in almost 20 hours, and our own cannons had long since gone cold, either because command was conserving charges or because the last guy who knew how to fix them had stepped on a misnamed cleaning drone. Spoiler, it wasn't for cleaning. "This stillness feels like indigestion," muttered Corporal Talbot beside me, adjusting the strap on his ammo pouch for the 15th time that hour. "Like the kind that hits before something crawls out your gut." "Appreciate the imagery, Talbot," I said, not looking away from the horizon. "You always know how to keep morale high." "That's what I'm here for. Tactical pessimism." My squad, Delta 9, was down to 5. We started with 12. 2 transfers, 1 promotion, rest in peace, Sergeant Wally, who got promoted sideways into a crater, and 4 killed in ways too ridiculous to be noble. One of them got out-sniped by a plant. Not even joking. It had a biological targeting mechanism and everything. Nature on this rock had a vendetta against geometry. And then, just when I thought the most dramatic part of the day would be ration bar roulette, banana fungus or meat, it happened. A ripple, like the world hiccuped. The dust across the center of the valley swirled, not from wind, but like the very idea of stillness was offended. Something shimmered into existence. No drone tags, no warning, just bam. There she was, a lone figure, no armor, no weapons, just a cloak made of some material that flickered between solid and possible fabric in an alternate universe. She stepped forward. one foot, then another, and she walked right into no man's land. Uh, is that a new model recon droid? Talbot asked. Does a recon droid usually have long hair and ears like decorative daggers? I replied. He squinted. Number. But I'm willing to believe procurement's gotten weird again. She kept walking. Not running, not slinking, walking, like she was on her way to pick up coffee, and we were just an unfortunate detour. The comms lit up like a holiday tree. Command. Unknown contact approaching, line echo. All units hold fire unless confirmed hostile. Bravo 6. Is that a civilian? Echo 2. It's an alien woman. Repeat. Alien, female, long ears, unarmed, possibly insane. Bravo 3. Permission to deploy greeting drone? Command negative. No sudden moves. Let's not trigger World War III before lunch. I stood up. I don't remember deciding to. I just did. Like my legs voted and didn't bother to check in with my brain. She was heading straight toward me. No, not toward us. Me. The others stayed low, watching, waiting. Probably ready to bolt if she pulled out a philosophical bomb or started reciting poetry. Two things Yalari were known to weaponize. I stepped down into the valley, one step, then another. My boots made that wet sucking noise mud makes when it's actively judging your life choices. The space between us closed slowly. 10 meters, then 6. I could see her face now, pale with a calm that looked practiced. Her long ears angled slightly backward, twitching just enough to betray awareness. Her eyes were silver, too bright, too deep, like they could reflect things that hadn't happened yet. And then she said it, just one sentence. You left this behind. She held up a patch, tattered, slightly burned at the edges, the old Terran emblem, a fractured earth held together by a chain of stars. It was mine, no mistaking it. I'd lost that patch on Grenthal Ridge, mid-firefight 3 years ago. It was a cheap souvenir I'd sewn onto my gear as a joke. I used to tell people I won it in a poker game with a Martian diplomat. I stared at it, then at her. How? You dropped it, she said. I picked it up. I kept it. Why? She blinked. It reminded me of you. You don't know me. I do now. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing appropriate came out. The only thing in my head was a fuzzy loop of, is this happening? Followed by, should I salute? Followed by, is this a trap involving Yalari perfume-based mind control? Then just to make the moment stranger, she smiled. You look confused, she said. I'm a little emotionally unprepared for this kind of battlefield reunion. It's not a reunion. What is it then? A beginning. Of what? She tilted her head. That depends entirely on how much of a fool you are. Well, I once tried to recharge a pulse grenade in a power outlet, so... She made a small sound. Not quite a laugh, but it had rhythm. Then perhaps this will be interesting. The wind gusted again. The world outside our little bubble of strange intimacy resumed its noise. Comms buzzed. Drones hovered. The war whispered for attention. But she only looked at me, and I couldn't look away. Would you like your patch back? She asked. I hesitated. No, I said. You've kept it this long. Might as well see where that leads. She nodded, and then she turned, cloak swirling behind her, walking away from both armies. I blinked. Wait, where are you going? She looked back. Someplace quieter. You're welcome to follow. Talbot's voice crackled in my ear. Merc, are you seriously chasing after the enemy diplomat sorceress lady with the fashion sense of a mysterious space librarian? I think I am, Tal. I hate how that doesn't surprise me. Tell Command I'll be back. Probably. Will you? No idea. And then I followed her, because some questions don't get answered from behind cover. Some answers walk toward you unarmed and hand you a forgotten piece of fabric, and then they invite you to chase them across the stars. We didn't go far. Not at first. About 300 meters beyond the reach of our outer motion turrets, there was a cluster of black stone pillars that jutted out of the ground like ancient fingers. They hummed faintly, which meant they either still had power or were very slowly dying and didn't want to be alone. She led me there, weaving between them with the same grace she'd walked across the battlefield, as if war were something that simply didn't apply to her. Meanwhile, I tripped on a rock, swore, and pretended it was all part of a tactical sidestep. She said nothing at first. I tried filling the silence. So, nice weather for an interspecies incident. She didn't respond. Not a talker? Still nothing. You know, in my experience, when a mysterious alien woman walks onto a battlefield and hands me a lost personal item from 3 years ago, there's usually at least some kind of ominous monologue. Maybe a prophecy, a mild threat. You're kind of subverting expectations here. She stopped. Then in a tone so even it could have leveled furniture. You talk too much. Occupational hazard. I thought soldiers valued silence. No. We just weaponize it when someone starts singing during midnight watch. She turned slowly to face me. You think this is a joke? I raised a hand. I think everything is a joke until I understand what's going on. Then I recalibrate and adjust my panic level accordingly. I see. I waited. She didn't continue. So, recalibrating would be easier if I had even a hint of what you're doing here. A small sigh escaped her. I came to end a war. Well, good news, so did I. We just had slightly different approaches. Her eyes didn't flinch, but the corners of her mouth hinted, barely, at amusement. You are more foolish than I anticipated. I try. Keeps people guessing, and shooting in the wrong direction. She turned away again and walked to one of the pillars, placing her hand against it. The surface lit up faintly beneath her touch, circuits blooming across the stone like glowing moss. What is this place? I asked, circling a few feet away, not touching anything, just in case it decided to explode in a culturally offensive way. A listening post, she said. Ancient. Predates your arrival here by millennia. Yalari? She looked at me like I'd asked whether the stars were made of cheese. Number older than us. The builders left traces like this across hundreds of systems. We've studied them for generations. Studied them into submission? Number into understanding. Well, that's very unwarlike of you. Not everything we do ends in fire. Most things, though. She didn't argue. I stepped closer. So, you keep a patch for 3 years, walk into a war zone, nearly get yourself vaporized just to hand it back to me, and then you bring me to a glowing alien relic to talk about archaeology. Should I be flattered or worried? Yes. That clears it right up. She turned to face me again, fully now. Her face was no less unreadable than before, but there was something behind her silver eyes that didn't match the reputation of her people. No cold command, no disdain, just a sort of studying intensity, the kind of look engineers give malfunctioning engines, or cats give lasers. 3 years ago, she said slowly, your convoy was ambushed near the Grenthal Ridge. Do you remember? Vividly. I still get twitchy around trees. I was part of the force that tracked your route. Okay, I said carefully. That's not creepy at all. You escaped. You left behind your jacket and your patch. We found it. We? My unit. And what? You held a funeral for it? Raised it like a pet? No. Her tone didn't change, but I swear the air got colder. We studied it. Studied? You stitched it by hand. The seams were uneven. The colors mismatched. It was ugly. Wow, brutal. But it was human, personal. It wasn't assigned to you. It was something you chose, a mark of identity, sentiment. Again, should I be flattered or worried? I didn't understand it then. We don't personalize war. Not like you. We do not wear symbols of loss. Well, maybe you should. Helps with all the surviving bits. She stepped toward me, just enough that I could smell something faint, ozone and burnt spices. I kept it, against orders. Why? Because I wanted to know what kind of species mourned with embroidery. I snorted. Pretty sure that was on the recruiting poster. I've watched you since then. That froze me. Not you personally, she added. Your kind, your division, your habits. You adapt. You improvise. You joke in the face of annihilation. And then you keep going. It is fascinating. You make it sound like a zoology exhibit. In a way it is, but now I want to do more than watch. Listen, I said, scratching the back of my neck. If this is building up to a romantic proposition, I have to warn you. I'm allergic to space politics, and I snore. She looked at me for a long moment, then finally smiled. Not a smirk, not a twitch. A real, full, undeniable smile. And it was terrifying. I am not here to court you, Ethan Mercer of Terra. I am here to recruit you. That's somehow worse. I am defecting. The world didn't go quiet because there was nothing in this part of the world left to quiet, but it felt like silence dropped. You're what? I am defecting, she repeated. I am offering intelligence, access, and command codes. In return, I held up both hands. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's slow this train of insanity down a little. You walk onto a battlefield, hand me a sentimental scrap from a war zone, bring me to a glowing alien monument, and then drop a betrayal bomb like it's a casual side quest? I thought you liked surprises. I like cake surprises, not intergalactic defection surprises. She folded her arms. Would you rather I delivered a more formal briefing? Yes, no, maybe. I don't know. This isn't exactly covered in the field manual. I chose you because you ask questions, because you don't trust protocol, because you make jokes to survive. That is who I need. For what? To stop something worse than this war. Oh, great. There's a worse? She looked back toward the horizon, where both our armies still sat behind invisible lines of suspicion and weaponry. You'll understand soon, but for now, you need to decide if you're coming with me. To defect? To survive? I looked down at the patch still in her hand. It didn't look like much, but suddenly it felt like a flag, or maybe a key, and I hadn't decided yet which door it opened. I didn't say yes. I also didn't say no, which in retrospect may have been the most honest answer I could have given, because agreeing to defect with an alien woman who just announced she was turning traitor, while standing on top of ancient ruins that might have once housed telepathic weather gods, that's the sort of decision you don't make without at least a coffee and a strong contractual loophole. She didn't press me. Instead, she handed me the patch. I took it. It was warm, which was weird, because fabric shouldn't be warm after 3 years in a war archive, unless Yalari closets came with central heating and gentle reminders to hydrate. We stood there for a long beat, the humming pillars around us pulsing softly, like they were trying to harmonize with the awkward tension. Or maybe mocking it. Alien tech had a lot of passive-aggressive energy. I finally spoke. So, assuming I even entertain this wildly illegal idea, what exactly does defecting entail? Do we, write a letter? Make a dramatic leap across enemy lines? Host a press conference where you dramatically toss your medals into the dirt? There are no medals, she said. We are not awarded for obedience. Wow, that explains the mood. I have a ship hidden in the upper canyons, auto-camouflaged, partially cloaked, very moody AI.moody. She believes she is a philosopher. Ah, a talking ship with an existential crisis. This just gets better. She also sings. Oh no, old Terran ballads. I think she's trying to mock me. That's, oddly specific. She has opinions. Of course she does. She turned and began walking. I followed, still not exactly sure why, except that my brain had apparently gone into full see where this leads mode, and no amount of internal screaming seemed to stop my legs. We walked in silence for a while, climbing a narrow path between jagged outcrops and bioluminescent fungi that flickered as we passed, either as a warning or a weirdly supportive audience. A cloud of micro-drones buzzed overhead, scanning the terrain for movement or misplaced emotional baggage. I finally broke the silence. So what's your name? She glanced at me. You mean my designation or my chosen name? The one that won't make my throat bleed when I try to pronounce it. She paused. You may call me Alari. That's actually pretty. What's it mean? In our language, it translates roughly to she who listens in silence. Wow, that's dramatic. I was not given it for my sense of humor. No kidding. She kept walking. I nearly slipped on a patch of moss and tried to play it off like a cool mid-stride dance move. She didn't comment, probably out of pity. After about a half-kilometer, the rocks opened into a narrow canyon mouth, hidden beneath a ridge that shimmered faintly with Yalari stealth shielding. You wouldn't have noticed it unless you were looking for the slight bend in light, like reality had been left out in the sun too long and was warping at the edges. Inside was a ship, sleek, long, painted in non-colors, black that wasn't really black, silver that only existed when you looked away. The kind of craft that either transported highly classified intelligence or moody artists who wrote poetry about the void. As we approached, the ship hissed softly, then spoke. "You're late." Ilari rolled her eyes. Traffic was dense, political unrest. One soldier with existential curiosity. "You brought a human. How cliché. Should I prepare him a snack? Perhaps something beige and nutritionally irrelevant?" I blinked. "She's sassy. I am refined. Your ship has a superiority complex. I've been cooped up in a canyon listening to bird excrement hit my hull for 17 days. Forgive me if I'm underwhelmed by your carbon-based swagger." Ilari glanced at me. "I warned you." "Yeah, but I thought moody AI meant brooding poetry and long silences. Not this. I also sing. Please don't. Too late." A low hum began to rise, followed by what I can only describe as a mashup between a 20th century earth jazz tune and what I assume was the sound of black holes contemplating revenge. It wasn't entirely unpleasant, just existentially aggressive. Ilari sighed and motioned toward the side hatch. "Ignore her. She gets worse when she's excited." "I'm not excited," the ship said, her voice now low and dangerous. "I am concerned. You're compromising mission integrity with romantic espionage tropes." "It's not romantic," I said quickly. "You say that now, but wait until the third act." Ilari stepped inside. I followed. The interior was colder than I expected, all smooth surfaces and drifting lights. Displays blinked open as we entered, showing tactical readouts, language overlays, some scrolling code in a dialect I couldn't begin to parse, and one screen that was inexplicably showing a slideshow of cats in uniforms. "Why?" "She thinks it helps morale," Ilari said. "Whose?" "Mostly hers." "I find their organizational hierarchy soothing," the ship said. "I'm gonna need therapy after this." "You can't afford me." We entered what must have been the main cabin, a compact space with 2 seats, a curved control console, and a wall full of touch-sensitive panels. Ilari pressed her palm to one. The lights shifted, the hum deepened. "Now," she said, her tone sharpening, "I need you to understand what happens next." "I was hoping for snacks first." She didn't smile. "You are about to be branded a traitor to your command. Your comm tag was already flagged when you left the trench line. The longer you stay with me, the more irrevocable your defection becomes." "So I'm already wanted." "Yes." "How wanted?" "There's likely a bounty." "Can I see it?" "No." "Why not?" "Because you'd brag." "You know me." She stared hard. "There's something coming, Ethan. Something worse than the Yalari. Worse than your war. A threat that neither of our sides understands." "Great. Bigger fish." "Why is it always bigger fish?" "It's not a fish. That's somehow worse." "I've seen traces of it. Signals, disappearances, entire stations gone without a trace. The builders left messages in places like this. Places your kind hasn't found yet. But we have, and we ignored them." I felt the weight in her voice settle like dust. "And now it's waking up." There was a silence. Then the ship added, "I told you this would happen, but no one listens to the singing ship." "Okay," I said, exhaling. "Let's say I believe you. What do we do?" Ilari's eyes narrowed. "We run." "Not a great plan." "We run and find the ones who still remember the old signals, the ones the war forgot." I looked down at the patch still in my hand. Maybe I was already one of them. And maybe the war was just the noise drowning out the real warning. The ship's jump core sounded like an angry choir being flushed through 1,000 kilometers of liquid static. I'd been in fast jump vessels before, but nothing like this. Ilari's ship didn't just move through space. It sort of disagreed with it, very loudly, until reality gave up and moved aside. We'd been in jump for maybe 5 minutes when the AI, who still refused to give me a proper name, started narrating. You are now traveling at precisely 17.3 times light speed through a compression stream generated by layered field pulses. Cool, I said. And that means, if we hit anything larger than a molecule, we will be vaporized before your brain finishes the word oops. Charming. Don't worry, Ilari added from the co-pilot seat. She says that every time. We haven't exploded yet. Reassuring. That's the same logic I use for not flossing. I hope you taste like regret. Still better than rations. We passed through a turbulent section of the jump, where space twisted so tightly around the hull that the edges of the cabin blinked out like a poorly rendered video game. I tried not to throw up. I also tried not to look like I was trying not to throw up. So where exactly are we running to? I asked, clutching the armrest like it owed me money. Station N7, off the chart. No official coordinates, no beacons. It used to be a data archive before it went dark. Went dark like lost signal? Or went dark like ominous music and last-minute distress calls? Yes. Awesome. Ilari adjusted a sequence on the panel. It's one of the builder-linked outposts. We've found 2 others like it, both abandoned. But this one sent a signal 20 hours ago. It used an old code, one not supposed to exist anymore. And you think it's connected to the disappearances? I don't think, she said. I know. There was a pause as I processed that. Then, cool. Just checking. You're sure this isn't some elaborate way to kidnap me, harvest my organs, and sell my teeth to a black market dentist? Ilari blinked. Your teeth have no strategic value. Wow. Wounded. The ship slowed without warning. Not just a deceleration, more like a full-body hiccup. The stars reappeared, elongated at first, then collapsing into their proper, less judgmental shapes. Ahead, half hidden in the shadow of a small dead moon, floated the station. Station N7 looked like it had once wanted to be important, and then gave up halfway through construction. Long cylinders stretched from a central hub like limbs from a fossil, covered in sensor dishes, comm towers, and exactly 0 signs of life. No docking signals, no lights, not even a polite, please don't trespass beacon. We're being watched, the AI said flatly. That's encouraging. The station is sending no active scans, but someone's there. I can feel it. Do all your feelings involve existential doom, or is that just your default mood? Yes. Ilari stood, checking the charge on a sidearm I hadn't even noticed her carrying. She offered me a second one. I took it. It was far too elegant for me, slender, perfectly balanced, and probably smarter than I was. What does this do? I asked, inspecting the grip. Mostly stuns, sometimes disassembles. People? Only the ones who ask too many questions. I tucked it into my belt. Perfect. I love ambiguous functionality. We docked silently, the ship attaching itself to one of the access ports like a spider, unsure if the web was already occupied. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and the moment we stepped onto the station, the gravity kicked in, weak but steady. The hallway beyond was wide, sterile, and lit by a few flickering panels that hadn't received a maintenance update in about a decade. There was also music, not loud, not clear, but just faint enough to be unnerving. I turned to Ilari. Is that opera? Terran, late 20th century. Why is Terran opera playing in an abandoned alien archive? Because the universe has a sense of humor. We moved slowly down the corridor. My HUD kept trying to identify the station systems, but came up empty every time. No pings, no access, just blank space where data should have lived. Then the lights shut off. I froze. Ilari didn't. Instead, she reached up and tapped a node behind her ear. Her eyes flashed momentarily, casting faint light. You got built-in night vision? Yes. I got dirt in my boots. She walked ahead. Then stay close, and don't make jokes. I can do one of those things. The darkness was total. No emergency lights, no glow strips. Just the soft echo of our boots on metal and the sound of old music seeping through the walls like regret. Then a door opened by itself. Light flooded the corridor from a single chamber, circular, high-ceilinged, lined with consoles and crystalline interfaces that looked untouched by time. At the center was a figure, not human, not Yalari, just tall, hooded, still. I raised the weapon. Ilari didn't. The figure turned, and though it had no visible face, I felt it watching me. Not with eyes, but with memory. "You came," it said. The voice wasn't spoken. It was broadcast, right into our heads, smooth and calm like a librarian welcoming overdue books. "I always come," Ilari replied. "You left the beacon. Because the time is near." "Define near," I whispered. "I once had a landlord who said rent was due soon, and then lit my trash on fire." The figure looked at me. I know that makes no sense, but it did. I felt its attention shift. "You carry the mark," it said. I blinked. "The what?" "The patch," Ilari whispered. "Show it." I pulled it from my pocket. The figure moved closer. "The child who survived. The carrier of chance. The one they missed. I have so many questions. You will not like the answers. Story of my life." The walls shifted. Panels opened. A projection unfolded. Stars, worlds, histories written in light. I saw fleets burn, civilizations vanish, a signal spreading like wildfire through the void. Not a weapon, a summons. "They are returning," the figure said. "The ones before the builders. The ones who erased to make space for themselves." "What do they want?" "To be alone." I turned to Alari. "So we're fighting cosmic introverts?" "Worse," she said. "They don't hate us. They just don't see us." "Oh good, galactic nihilism." "Ethan," the figure said, "you must decide. Fight with her or die apart." I looked at the projection, at the patch, at the woman who'd crossed a battlefield to find me. I sighed. "Guess I'm in." Ilari smirked. The figure bowed, and somewhere deep in the universe, something very old opened one eye. "We didn't leave the station the way we came in. Because when something ancient tells you they are returning, the wise response isn't, 'Cool, let's stick around for dessert.' It's to run very quickly in the opposite direction while wondering whether your species' last words will be oops." Back on the ship, the AI hummed ominously. "I felt the pulse," she said. Something vast moved in the background of the stars, like gravity had a bad dream. "Can you be less poetic and more, 'How screwed are we?' Ethan, if I had a spine, it would be shivering." "Cool. Love the confidence." Alari was quiet, scanning the data pulled from the station. Her hands moved faster than my eyes could track. Symbols, glyphs, entire star charts unfolded in holograms, most of which were labeled in a language I was fairly certain you could only pronounce with a second larynx and a sense of deep cosmic dread. "So, what now?" I asked, gripping the co-pilot chair like it might help. She glanced at me, a flicker of something like exhaustion behind her eyes. "Now we warn someone." "Anyone in particular?" "Everyone." We started with the Ilari High Command. They didn't pick up. Correction. They picked up, stared blankly, and then promptly tried to geo-lock the ship's coordinates and dispatch a kill drone. We left them a message that began with, "So you might want to sit down for this," and ended with the AI humming a slow rendition of an Earth funeral dirge in D minor. Next was Terran Command. My old squad mates had already filed me as MIA turned traitor, turned possibly abducted by Space Fae. When we finally broke through comm jamming and connected with Command Channel 7, the general who answered looked like he'd aged 12 years in the time it took me to say, "Hi." "Mercer," he said, stunned. "You're alive." "Yup. Turns out betrayal is good cardio." Behind him, several officers stared at Alari's face on the split screen, unsure whether to salute, scream, or ask for her autograph. We told them everything. The stations. The ancient race that was neither good nor evil, just returning. The figure at N7. The pattern of vanishings stretching across 5 sectors. The war that had been nothing more than background noise to something older. They didn't laugh. They didn't believe us either. But they didn't hang up. It was a start. In the following weeks, Alari and I became something between emissaries and myth. We flew from system to system, station to station, trailing after rumors like cosmic janitors trying to clean up a mess that began before our galaxies were born. Sometimes we found signs, rippled space, static ghosts in quantum drives, derelict satellites orbiting dead planets that blinked in prime numbers before melting. Sometimes we found nothing, but the pattern kept growing, and so did the urgency. Along the way we argued, a lot. She thought too tactically, I thought too loudly. She believed in strategy, I believed in improv. She insisted on caution. I once tried to outsmart a security drone using a sock and a badly drawn smiley face. But eventually we started syncing. She loosened, I focused. We met somewhere in the middle, usually around midnight, running diagnostics with caffeine substitutes that tasted like regret and battery acid. She taught me how to fly the ship. I taught her how to lose at cards. We became, as she once dryly noted, mutually tolerable. One night, if you can call anything night in deep space, I found her staring at the patch. "You still have it," I said. She looked up. "It's part of the story." "Which one?" "Ours." A long silence stretched between us, the kind that didn't feel awkward anymore. Then she asked, "Do you regret leaving?" "Earth? The war? My old socks?" "Nope. You?" She didn't answer, but she didn't have to. By the third month, the warnings had spread far enough. Independent fleets began to report sightings. Minor factions paused conflicts to share data. Even the Yalari admitted, in their extremely dignified way, that hostilities may no longer be the optimal strategy. And then the real signal came. Not a beacon, not a message, a shadow. It blinked into the edge of a quiet system like a curtain falling across the stars. A ship the size of a small moon, made not of metal but memory. It didn't fire. It didn't speak. It simply arrived. And then every satellite within half a light year shut down, like they forgot how to be machines. We watched from a distance. "That's not a fleet," I said. "That's a verdict." Elari nodded. "Then we appeal." It took 3 more weeks, but we found a way. Not to fight, because there was no fighting that. Not with weapons, not with tactics, but with a story. Using builder tech buried beneath a forgotten relay station, Elari activated an ancient transmitter. Together we built a memory stream. Images, sounds, emotions. Not lies. Just everything we were. Our hopes, our jokes, our patchwork cultures, our infuriating contradictions. We showed them Terran laughter and Yalari silence. Our mistakes, our grief, our messy, painful growth. And we ended with the patch. I stood in front of the final transmission node, holding it up like it was a flag or a surrender or both. "This was lost in war," I said. "Found by someone who should have ignored it, carried through battles and betrayals and the kind of conversations that make you question your species. But we're still here, and we'd like to stay." The signal went out. The shadow paused. Then it moved on. It didn't respond, but it didn't erase us, which, for something that ancient, might as well have been a handshake. Now I live on a station that shouldn't exist, married to a woman who once nearly shot me for making a pun about gravity. Our ship's AI has published 2 poetry collections and won a small literary award from a sentient nebula. We still argue, still joke, still wander when the galaxy gets too quiet. The war ended, not with victory, not with defeat, but with understanding. Funny what you find when you stop looking for someone to shoot and start listening to someone who walks straight into a battlefield just to return something you forgot you lost. The patch hangs on our wall now. Still ugly, still mine, still hers.